In this next session, we'll be hearing from 4ODs who come to the idea of negotiating and self-advocacy from different perspectives. We'll listen as they talk about how they've wrestled with how to define their value. It's not just about dollars, and how they gain the confidence to ask for what they want and deserve. Today's panelists include Dr. Hardeep Kataria, an associate at an ophthalmology practice in Oxnard, California. Dr. Maria Sampalis in Cranston, Rhode Island, has 2 private practices and 1 corporate practice. Dr. Dori Carlson, who co-owns 2 private practice locations in North Dakota with her husband. You may also know her as the first woman OD to be president of the American Optometric Association. And we also have Dr. Leslie Odell in Pennsylvania, who's recently expanded her platform as a dry eye specialist to an exciting new endeavor as clinical director of Medical Optometry America. We're happy that you all could be here, and I'll hand off the conversation. What are you worth to you, Dr. Carlson? Thank you.
Thank you. This is fun to be with you guys and talk about this. When the idea of negotiation first was brought up to me, I thought, oh my gosh, I can't do that. I have never negotiated for my salary because I've always been self-employed and I've employed myself, unless I've negotiated with my husband about my salary, who knows. But then I thought, you know what? I have negotiated the purchase price of a practice. I've negotiated the purchase of 3 office buildings. I've negotiated the purchase of 3 homes. So, you know, sometimes negotiation is different for each of us, and you know, it means different things. And we kind of assume it's just about what our pay is or our salary is, but it's really different for each of us. And it's, you know, we negotiate with toddlers, right? So we negotiate every single day with somebody. So, you know, Hardeep, I saw you're a 2012 grad from New England, right?
Yes.
And you're in an ophthalmology practice, is that what it is?
Yes, it's a multidisciplinary setting, yes.
Okay, so tell me about that. How did that go for negotiation for you? And what do you know now that you wish you knew before?
Yes, definitely. So, you know, when I first graduated, I didn't have any experience in negotiating. You know, we come out of school and there's not a lot of focus in the curriculum regarding that. And so the one thing that I have really learned kind of as the years have gone by is that I don't just have to negotiate my salary, but there's lots of other parts of the contract. You know, we can talk about health benefits, we can talk about PTO, we can talk about tech support, scribes, things like that. And so that's something that I've definitely learned as time has gone on. And now that I'm in this practice and I've been here for a few years, that's something that I started with, having that experience behind me.
You get wiser, right? You go.
That's so true. Yes, exactly. And it doesn't come easy. I mean, there's definitely an experience and steps, and you kind of grow through that. And I definitely did grow through that. And with Maria, I think people would be interested in hearing if there's room in the corporate world for negotiation, and what has that taught you?
Yeah, so I'm currently in negotiations with toddlers as well to keep quiet when you're doing a webinar. So that has been much more stressful than negotiating, let's say, a contract or anything else. But yeah, I think if you do your homework, you kind of understand what your value is to that practice. If the practice has been dark for a while, you know there's a need. You know, the doctor is a big part of optical sales, so that's important as well. You know, doing your homework with the Facebook group, there's a lot of information out there. The websites have the information as well that I provided to doctors, and I reviewed a lot of contracts. So I'll be able to compare the contracts and say, look, your colleague in North Carolina, you know, had the same salary. I think that's great, but they had a certain sign-on bonus. Talk to your colleagues, get a mentor, talk to someone that's been through it, but also kind of, you know, go for that interview, even if you're not looking to take that job, because when you go back to the other job, you can say, this company offered me this salary, what can you do? And they'll come back with it. And, you know, let them know that you're able to, you're, you know, a new grad, you're able to see patients, you're happy to work certain days, and what you bring to the office. So understanding that is important, and showing that you're a team player is important as well, that you work well with others. I think that has big value. And again, negotiating besides just salary, but other things, like a restricted covenant. Some covenants are larger and than others. Usually normal is between 1 to 3. I've seen some 7 to 8. Think ahead, think about what could happen in the future, what you're looking to do, because that could set you back for another opportunity.
And were you talking about, when you say 1 to 3 and 7 to 8, is that mileage?
Mileage, yeah. 1 to 3 is normal. I've seen some, corporate practice have 7 to 8. That's a little high. And I've seen, even looking at, private practice contracts, some are, 25 miles that some doctors have, signed. And
well, I was just thinking, Maria, I might have needed you already 2 times throughout my career, because I have had 10-mile non-competes. Granted, it's a little bit more of a rural community, but that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
I kind of blindly signed them, the first time for sure.
That's correct. And there's some other things within contracts that I've seen with intellectual property and things like that. Usually employees are not privy to information like that, and kind of, have that over your clause, or if you're, you develop something, it's property of the company, I think is not fair for young ODs to have that. So that's important to make sure that you're aware of. And just if things are vague in a contract, ask them to be more specific. My sister's a lawyer, and we'll go through them together, and because I'll get more information that way. And she goes, just be more specific. It's nothing wrong to ask and come back. And, it's okay to say no on certain things. And sometimes these negotiations are just a waiting game. So how long can you wait? You can wait. They have deadlines. They have performance reviews. They have to fill these positions. Use it to your advantage.
Good advice.
So I want to turn it over to Dr. Odell, who's built a great dry eye practice and an existing practice. Has a great platform for a speaker and a writer, and clinical director for medical optometry. What are your experiences to make it more valuable for people to work for? What makes you decide to what that means?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, thanks. It's really fun to be able to talk about this with you ladies. And like I said, I wish I would have had you 10 years ago. So I think, what you said, Maria, about finding a mentor or being able to talk to other optometrists when you are originally getting a job is important. So I started, much like you, Hardeep, with multidisciplinary ophthalmology practice. And I was just really excited to get the job and be able to apply my residency training, in this practice where I was going to get to see ocular disease every day, no vision plans, no contact lenses, just what I thought, was what I wanted to do. And what I learned through that was that I did bring value to that practice in the way that I treated the patients. At first, patients were really resistant to seeing me. Not only I was the only woman in the practice, but then I also was not a surgeon at the, and they never even knew what an optometrist was in that practice to start. But once I was able to see the patients and just build the rapport, it got to the point where they would request me and, want to see me and refer their friends and family. And through that particular journey, which was the first 11 years of my career, I really became very interested in dry eye management. My timing of that, I think, helped. So I was doing a lot of post-cataract care when Restasis had first launched, so like 2004. We didn't have a lot of treatment options. I was trying to figure out how can you identify the patients before the surgery, because they weren't 20/20 happy, even though they were seeing well. And I struggled a bit because of some of the dynamics inside the practice, like the technicians. If the owner was not seeing my point of view, the technicians would be really resistant even to bring in new technology, to be able to do testing, like point of care testing. And so I feel like I did show my value, at least to that surgeon at the time. We were the first practice in Pennsylvania to acquire LipiFlow, and that was a big acquisition price at that time. So I feel like I had to, like, you know, show my value to him that way. But then as I wanted to bring in more, I really actually struggled to do that. And then it got to be just a situation that I knew I was already, you know, I was kind of at the ceiling there, and I needed to look for a different platform, which is where I spent the past 5 years in an optometry practice doing the same thing, bringing a dry eye specialty to the practice. And that has been a really great opportunity for me. I got to show the value of dry eye management, build a dry eye niche within an optometry practice. We got so much support from the OD community in that area. So I was getting tons of referrals from my optometry colleagues, which was really exciting to see, as well as, you know, ophthalmology in that area. But again, I just keep looking to the future. And what I learned actually by going solely dry eye was that I missed a lot of the other things that got me interested in disease, which was glaucoma management, you know, in particular AMD. And I certainly could manage more disease in that setting, but if you know, it's hard to get patients, at least where I am, to seek glaucoma care in a private OD office. You know, you got to kind of diagnose new and then take over. They just seem to land in these multidisciplinary practices where they're seeing optometrists often. And that's why I'm kind of in this new transition, which I really hope I can be the voice for other optometrists that are medically focused, you know, and want to keep on that path. So that's kind of what Medical Optometry America is building. It's building a platform for the medically focused optometrist to have a home, you know, much like what Maria is doing, you know, in the commercial settings, but independent of vision plans and optical, and really just focusing on the disease management. But I think what I learned along the way the most is that no matter what setting you are in, you're having a passion and really just you know, learning about whatever that passion is going to bring value to whoever you're, you know, employed by. And that's what I think I learned the most. And then also don't be afraid to move from one place to the next if you feel like you're undervalued. And it's okay, you know, it's okay. That's what took me the longest in my career so far, was to realize that it was okay to make a change. And honestly, once I made that first change, it made my second change a lot easier to do.
That's correct. I think it's important to be able to make that change. And I feel that the younger generation, millennials, they say that they, you know, rotate jobs, and it's not a bad thing, you know. Rotating jobs every 3-4 years or so will help, because you'll get increased income. You'll see what else is out there, maybe partnership opportunities, maybe income potential, whatever you're looking for. And then sometimes with your life changing, if you have a family, whatever the case is, that life changes, sometimes that job is not right for you at times. So over the years, I've you know, switched jobs, different subleases, private practice, whatever the case was. And I find like the next opportunity was always better than the others. Just if you get comfortable, that's when things don't work out, I think, my opinion, in the best way. So
I do think something that you said earlier, Maria, I'm an employer. So, you know, the other part of this, so I'm in a little different situation than the rest of you, but as an employee, I think it's important, like you said, Maria, do your homework. Talk to other people so that you don't go to, if you're going to negotiate your salary, for instance, be reasonable about what actually is the going rate. I mean, I've had some crazy things said to me, like, really? You know, and you lose your credibility if you haven't done your homework. So, you know, if you just go in and have some crazy number, that's kind of a different way about approaching it too. So just to kind of, you know, tag off of what you said on that part of it.
Well, that's correct. Yeah. As an employer as well, you know, employers talk to other employers in the area. So you know, the practices know, they know. So whether it's, you know, hiring an optician, optometrist, people know. So, you know, when you do go to those interviews, you want to be respectful, and you don't want to have that crazy number out there, because, you know, that information does go out.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, especially also, I think that you want to create some fairness when you're negotiating, because if you're in it for a long term and you're looking to make, create that long-term professional relationship, then you really want to get off on the right foot. And so that's something that I have also learned kind of, in my negotiating.
Negotiating is not about like winning, or it's just like focus on a mutual agreement that benefits both. You don't want to sign for something and and be at a job that you're not happy with. It just doesn't help with anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you
Also, I was just going to say one quick thing. I also think people get very, in a good way, they get very attached to the patients they're serving.
Yeah.
I've seen this a lot too, and they don't want to leave the patients. But so if you're not, moving you're not moving your family, there are opportunities depending on that non-compete that you signed initially, that you don't have to uproot and move to a different state, to practice, just to find a different environment. I think that and honestly, if you're staying in a similar location, patients will find you. That's what I found. I had patients driving 45 minutes when I made my first move, and they're already emailing saying, "When's your practice opening? Like, we need to get on the books, for the first time you're opening." So I think patients will find you, and but it is nice that you feel that connection to patients, but at the same time, you don't want it to be at your own detriment, right? That you're in a job that is, does become very comfortable and you're afraid to make that jump.
Yeah. I feel that within the corporate setting too, the doctors that sublease, they build their patient base. The patient, there's a misconception that, they're there for the brand, but if you're there for a while and you build a good rapport, you're doing the best care for your patients, medical model, just caring for your patients. If you make a decision and you need to leave or go somewhere else or whatever the situation is, patients follow. A big misconception is that patients don't follow. They do. And, if you've done what you're supposed to be doing when you're there, and you build your patient base and, you have cash reserves to make that move, whatever the case is, patients will follow. And a lot of doctors sometimes are so comfortable, or the fear of the unknowns, or what they've been told from other people that they haven't succeeded, or failure inhibits them to make that change. But, sometimes just going and doing it, it'll be a great success for your own career. I've had many changes that I've had to do, and I'm not going to say that a lot have been successful, but have I been in fear? Yeah, of course. There's always fear of change, and you have a family and things like that. But, the biggest, risks have been the best rewards. So.
Hardeep, do you think your negotiations easy for you, or do you struggle with that, or?
I struggled at first, definitely. When I came again, right when I graduated, I had some advice, from mentors and residency attendings and things like that, to find one job and stick to it as long as I could. And so when I found myself in a position that I didn't really love, it was hard for me to negotiate myself out of that position. And it took a lot of courage for me to, especially as a young, newly graduated OD, to say, this is not serving me and I need to move on from this. How do I move on from this? Especially when I've had so much advice from people that, I should really try to make it work. And so, it kind of goes back to that first point that I had made, that, you learn and you grow, and sometimes growth is uncomfortable and change is uncomfortable. But, as you said, Dori, you get wise, you grow wiser through this journey. And so, it definitely did not come easily to me at first. And I've had some, great experiences with it. I have had some not so great experiences with it. And through that, it definitely has become a lot easier. And like Maria said, there's definitely fear that comes along with, change. But I think that, again, it comes back to that point of growth. When I felt like I was becoming a little bit stagnant in my first year at my current practice, sat down with my employer and I said, look, I really want to understand my productivity. I want to understand what I'm contributing to the revenue. Can we figure out a way that that information becomes available to me so that we can have a little bit more of a transparent professional relationship? And so that was something that, again, brought fear because of that change. And also, you know, how am I going to approach this situation? And I'm so happy that I did, because now I actually have access to my productivity and I can kind of figure out, you know, how am I performing from one year to the other, from one season to the other. And I am my biggest competition, you know, so I can compare my January from 5 years ago to all the way up until now and really see my growth. And so that, you know, I really had to, you know, convince myself of my worth first. You know, what am I bringing to the practice? How can I help the practice grow? How can I increase the revenue of the practice? And then kind of move from there as we talk about my productivity. And so definitely a lot of fear around that change for negotiation. And I completely agree with what everybody has been saying. And once I feel like I took that leap, it definitely gets easier and easier every time. So I definitely, you know, appreciate that. How about you?
The best advice that I've given to people is do something that scares you, because
Yes.
that's the way you grow. If you always stay in your little comfort zone, that's not where the growth happens. And so
Exactly.
your point, Hardeep, is if you do something that's kind of scary, you know, running for the AOA board and asking somebody to vote for me was, the first time I asked somebody to vote for me was like, my gosh, I'm trying to sell myself. That was scary, but you know, that's where the growth stuff happens. So, but yeah, that's good. So, okay, you know, just to kind of, I'm looking at the time here just a little bit. What about if you had a negotiating tip, what would be your best negotiating tip that you could come up with? Leslie, do you have one?
I would just say to not be afraid. You know, we aren't taught a lot about this when we're going through optometry school. I mean, at least myself was not very comfortable having just a conversation around money to begin with. I'm much like you talking about, like, I want to be able to benchmark and maybe you do this, Dori, but the practices I worked in, they didn't really do that. Like, I wanted to know how well I was doing, and I was going to, you know, be a better employee if I could see that. So I think that just being able to ask for the things that are going to make you a more efficient, you know, worker, enjoy your job more. I think just not being afraid is a big one for sure. And knowing that you might not always get the answer that you think you want or need. And so my talk with an employer in the past kind of was around productivity, and I was accused of some things that are just not true to my character. But what that did was, you know, showed me, like, now it's time for me to move on, right? You know, I was kind of taking a really long time on making a decision. Along that way, I would go in to talk about my productivity, and basically kind of came down to, I was more interested in money than patient care, which again is not who I am as a person. I'm, you know, definitely most motivated by taking the best care of my patients. But that just showed me, you know, this is just not the right environment for me anymore. I need to start looking for a new job. So just trying to be courageous, because it is an awkward, you know, most of us, I feel like, are all in the same boat. We just aren't accustomed to having that conversation. But the most difficult conversations help you get to the next step. I think my husband says something about, like, you know, 2 minutes of awkwardness can lead to, you know, just giving yourself the, you know, the 2 minutes, or it might even be only 30 seconds of courage that you need just to get through an awkward conversation. And then that will turn into, you know, some kind of good.
Yeah. Maria,
Yeah,
do you have a negotiating tip?
Yeah, I think some tips is before, even before you go in for that review, maybe you look around, you see what else is to offer, and that way you kind of go in with more confidence if you have another offer on the table, right? Or you have information, you know, like the doctors in the area know who's hiring, they know who's, you know, so if there's a lot more opportunities out there in, you know, certain states, if is more of easier to find jobs, then, it related to the payroll as well. But also ask get friends, go to the local meetings, ask your sales reps, or, they know a lot of information. They know who's hiring. They have the inside scoop on practices. And then you get to know things like that, and understand your worth, and go in there with confidence. At the beginning, when I got out of school, I didn't know, but now, once you do that, it's failure, you get confidence, and the confidence is like a magic pill. Once, and even, once you get that confidence, it doesn't matter. Even if you get rejected, you just move on to the next one. You're just, you just move on, and you're on to the next thing. And, sometimes it's those little wins that kind of make it much more worth it than just, winning the war.
And then you get one win, and then you feel more confident to do something else.
That's correct. It's little battles. It's not winning the whole war.
True.
Hardeep, what about you? Negotiating tip?
Yes, definitely. I think, what I've learned kind of through the years is when I'm making my, negotiation plan, I try to put myself on the other side. I try to put myself in their shoes and think, well, why would I say yes to this if I were an employer, for example? And so that, I think that kind of ties back into, the fairness of things, and be reasonable in what you're asking for, especially because, when you're going in for that position, you hopefully are looking for a long-term relationship. And then the second thing is I truly 100% agree with what Maria is saying. If it's a no, don't take it personally. And that's really tough. And I'd love to be able to take my own advice sometimes, because sometimes I do take it personally, and I'm human, and that's okay. But that fear of rejection, definitely kind of carries a lot of weight in a negotiation. And so, if it didn't work out, it wasn't meant to be, and something bigger is waiting on the other side. And I truly believe that too.
Use that rejection as motivation.
Yes, exactly.
That is definitely very good fuel. That really helped push me over the past 4 years. I feel like was just actually having some conversations that really, created that fire, that I really felt like I had something I needed to prove. Yeah. So I think that you're right. Mm-hmm.
So use it as fuel for the fire.
And also just that knowing that, if you have had a failure, or you're in a place that's not making you the happiest, you might not be able to see what's next, but just keeping the faith that it's staying true to yourself and true to, what your values are along this journey. And it will come. It's just sometimes that waiting game is the hardest part.
The waiting game. And what I've also found is you're true to yourself, you prove to yourself, but there's other people watching, right? So other optometrists, younger optometrists, even your own kids. So your motivation and inspiration for others too. Think about that. And then people that are watching this video that, might not think they're in a bad situation, have seen that, others have been in the same situation and have done well with it, is important. So, it's for yourself, but also for others around you that we talked to, that you realize that you didn't, you're talking about, it made a big impact.
Yeah, all great points.
Somebody said to me, in any negotiation, there's price and there's terms. And you really won if you got both price and terms. But for the most part in negotiation, it's if somebody gets their price, then it's about whatever the terms are. And that can be salary or benefits, or it can be purchasing a practice. It can be whatever it might be. But, if somebody wants X for a price, then, or X for a salary, then negotiate what the benefits are or what the terms are. So, you just remember there's only two parts of negotiation, price and terms. Well, this has been great, guys. It's been really fun to visit with you, and I just highly regard all of you, and fun to get to know you a little bit better and your tips for negotiation. And hopefully we've all just kind of gotten a nugget out of today's conversation, and so we can go forth and conquer the world, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.